we're going to do just a little bit of a get to know you here because we want you to know who's going to be presenting today, and we want to get to know you guys a little bit. So I am Allison Rozier. I am the Director of Education here for the Sarasota Orchestra.
I'm Travis Kaplinski. I'm the Education Manager here for the Sarasota Orchestra.
I'm David Pineda Hueso, and I help them. And I'm a luthier and a musician here in Sarasota.
Matt, you want to introduce yourself now or later?
I'll do it later.
Okay, you'll do it later. So we'll be talking today a little bit about careers in the arts, but we just kind of want to get a feel for the group here. So how many of you play a brass instrument? Okay, how about a woodwind instrument? Okay, strings? Only one?
I don't know.
How about piano?
I want
Voice? Those that sing in a choir? Or... Okay, so a lot of singers. Great. Jazz? Just a little bit.
to turn up the
Piano?
I want to try, but I don't know how to.
Okay, digital music? So this would be your digital music class? So as you can see, just by doing that introduction, there are a lot of different ways that you can participate in music. There are 143 career choices within music. We cannot possibly go through all of those choices today. So what we're going to do is give you tools to start to research possible careers, start finding a way to narrow down your focus so that if you do want to make music a part of your life, either as a career or just as a hobby, we're going to give you some tools to be able to do that. So on your tables here, there is a blank sheet of paper. You can write notes on that sheet. You can do whatever you need on that sheet. And then the second one I'm going to steal from you real fast. These are just notes about our presentation. You can take this back with you. These are resources that you can use when you get back home and as you're starting to plan careers. We're not going to go all the way through this. This is just information for you to take with you. So we always like to start with these, that because there are so many careers in the arts. How do you decide? How do you make a decision? How do you narrow your focus down? Most of you probably know about a symphony orchestra. Has everybody seen a symphony orchestra before? So some of you have. So performing is kind of that first aspect. When you think about music, you think about performing. You think about getting up as a rock singer or being part of a band or an orchestra. That is definitely a career path that you can choose and you can look into. But there are so many other options. So what we're going to start today, I'm going to turn it over to Travis. There is a really great website out there, and it is the first one on your sheet. It is called Career Finder. If you want to pull. Did you go to sleep? We've had it on too long. So as soon as this loads, what you can do when you go to this website is start to look and finalize and streamline some of your choices in your careers. It's going to ask you some questions, hopefully as it will load. There it goes. It's going to ask you some questions, and at the end, it will give you some options of some careers. Travis is going to walk you through that now that it is loading.
Yeah. So, show of hands, how many of you guys have an idea of what you want to do when you grow up?
Oh, wow.
Very nice. How many people
Anybody
are...
want to volunteer
Yeah.
what they want to do?
I would probably be a music producer or a marine biologist.
Music producer or marine biologist. Awesome. Wow. Composers, I like it. Police. Police? So anything. Okay. We got one more. We have some awesome careers.
Yeah, a lot of different things in this room. That's awesome. Show of hands, how many doesn't have a clue what they want to do? Not at all. Don't know what they want to do when they grow up? Awesome. Hey, there's nothing wrong with that. You have plenty of time to figure that out. I'm still trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. So I need a volunteer. Who wants to kind of walk through this website with me and kind of figure out options of maybe what they could do when they
In music.
In music.
These are all music.
These are going to be music. I'll go with you. What's your name? Tyler, Travis. Alright, Tyler. So I'm gonna ask you a series of questions, and you can see on the projection screen. So, what are you most interested in? Songwriting, performing, music ed, recording and producing, music business and touring, or music health? Recording and producing? Alright. Great. And then we'll click that, and then we will get started. Alright, this next stream. So we're gonna find a little bit about you, what your interests are. So, are you a songwriter, performer, or music producer, or you just want to work in the music business? You want to work in the music business? Alright, and what kinds of things get you excited? Now, it's a little lengthy list, so we're going to go through all of them and choose. You can choose more than one. So, music production, I'm assuming. Yep. Electronic music? No. What about music recording? Music business? Yes. No. Singing, songwriting. Do you piano on the child? Bass guitar? Drummer? What about becoming a DJ? No. You want to become a record or a music producer? Maybe. Okay, we can check that box. What about a lifestyle technician? No. You want to be like a session studio musician? Yes. Do you want to work in music education at all? No? We'll leave it on blank. You want to work on the radio? You want to work on the radio? Alright, cool. Music industry touring? Do you want to work in music publishing? Do you publish music? No. What about merchandising? That's like clothes? Yeah. Music journalism? No. What about advertising and public relations? Yeah, okay. And then do you want to do any sort of symphony, orchestra, or opera? Yeah, alright. Geez, a very lengthy list, but we finally reached the end. So we'll click next. And how old are you? We're going to just say you're 13 because that's
as far as it goes.
Okay, and so this next page is going to give you a list of results from the things that you chose in that questionnaire. There are a plethora of options that they're going to give you, so don't ever feel overwhelmed. But we'll just go through a couple of these and figure out maybe if this is something you want to do. Would you want to, is record producer something that might be interesting to you? Maybe? Recording engineer? No? What about personnel manager? Okay, we'll go with the first one then, the record producer. So here we're going to click on become a record producer because he's thinking about becoming a record producer, so we'll figure out what he needs to do in order to get there. This next page is going to give you a brief description of what the job is, what it entails. It'll give you a sort of a salary range, so here you can see that it's a very large salary range. You could be working, making anywhere between $25,000 to $1 million plus as a record producer, or record producer. But it all depends on what record label you're working for and all that stuff. A lot of different variables go into that as well, as far as money, where you're located. That'll have a big impact on what you're going to be making. So down here, we scroll down. It'll go into more detail about what the job description is, what you can expect to be doing within that career field. I'm not going to sit here and read all this because, as you can see, it's very, very long. But as you keep going, it gives you options on how you need to advance in your career, what you need as far as education and training in order to get that career, what kind of school you need to go to, what kind of degree you need, and then also experience and skills that are required for this job. Now, just like I said, there are, and Mel Allison said too, there are not billions, but there are a lot of options as far as music careers, and they not necessarily have to be strictly music. On this other side, if you are thinking, like you said you're thinking of doing, becoming a record producer, there are also on the right side of the screen a list of related careers that you could possibly, even if you might be interested in becoming a record producer, just go and maybe take a look at some of these, and maybe you'll find that something else might be interesting to you, and you might want to learn more about becoming an arranger, a composer, like she said she might want to become a composer, an assistant engineer, mastering engineer, all that good stuff. So this website is a really great website for just a place to get started, and give you options and just letting you know and giving you information of what all is out there, because there's so much out there. The world is your oyster, pretty much.
So really for us, we don't want to do this for everybody, we don't want to take that time away from you, but the link is on this page. You can go home, you can go back to your schools, fill this out yourself. Start to get an idea, narrow that focus down of possible career choices for yourself. The best piece of advice we can give you, and Travis and myself are actually perfect examples of this, we changed our careers multiple times. What I said I was going to be in elementary school is nowhere close to where I am right now. And even for both of us, when we went off to college, we both went off as performance majors. We both have degrees in performance. We both have our masters in performance. And life has taken us another direction. And we still perform and we still love performing, but that's not how we make our careers right now. So I want to tell you guys, be open to options. Go on this website if you're interested in a career in music, kind of narrow your focus down. And if you get to the bottom and you say, I really want to be a DJ artist, what now do you have to do? What resources can your school start providing for you, or your community can start providing for you, so that you can get an idea of what those careers are all about? The best thing you can do is try. Take other electives at your school, especially in high school. If you can get to play in the band and sing in the choir, do that. If any of your schools have clubs after school, if you have an electronic music program, try all of that, because you don't know what's going to sink in. You're going to experience something and go, wow, that was really fun. Can I make this my career? And I think, Travis, I think probably everybody in the room here that's an adult, you have to find something you love doing. If you hate your job, you're going to be miserable, and that's not good for anybody. But I guarantee you will find something that you love to do and that you want to do every day of your life. And we will help kind of get you there and kind of gear you in that direction if it's music. Part of what we're going to do today is give you an introduction to some of what we here do. So the Sarasota Orchestra, and I know a lot of you are not local, but you do have a symphony orchestra down in Fort Myers, and Naples does have a symphony orchestra also. Part of what we do, the Sarasota Orchestra itself, this is our sort of rehearsal building. We don't do a lot of concerts here, but we rehearse in this building. There is another event that's happening in the next section over, but we rehearse here. The Sarasota Orchestra employs about 100 musicians a season. 40 of those are core musicians that are employed throughout the season, play every single concert. And then we add extra musicians depending on what is programmed by the composer. On top of that, the Sarasota Orchestra has 34 full-time faculty or full-time staff members here. And we range from education. We work in education. There are people that work in our box office selling tickets. There are people that work in development. And they are the people that go out in the community and raise funds for the orchestra to continue to offer the programming that we do. If you look in your packets, let's do a different one so I don't keep borrowing yours. If you look in your packet, this first section here, so we gave you some links to possibly look into some careers, and then we just gave you a very brief overview. If you're considering a career in music education, here is the possible focus of music education and kind of what a person in music education would do. If you flip to the second page here, the back side of it, we've given you some more outlines. Again, there's 143 careers in music. We can't possibly go through all of those today. So we've given you kind of an outline of all of those. But then if you skip to the bottom, so a possible career with an orchestra, and that's where we are at. You can go to these links. The League of American Orchestra is a great website. You can go on there, you can click on a job, it will give you a description of what the job is, it will give you a description of salary ranges, and much like this website, it will tell you what your next steps are. So if you go in and say, I want to work in music education, which is where we are, what career path do I have to do, or what college do I have to go to, what degree do I have to have, what kind of experiences do I have to be able to do to be able to get that job, and also what is my salary going to look like. If you'll pull up the fourth tab. Good. So this is, yeah, that one. So this is the League of American Orchestras website. They have job descriptions for pretty much everything within an orchestra. So if you want to work for a symphony orchestra in any capacity, as a performer or as on staff, you can go online and read these descriptions. Now you'll sort of see at the bottom where it says see chart 2 and chart 3. I actually printed one of those charts for you. So your next page is this organizational chart. This is an organizational chart. Has everybody seen an organizational chart before? Do you know what these are about? Have you seen these in school?
Yes.
Some of you, yes. So this is for a large symphony orchestra, and the Sarasota Orchestra is considered a large symphony orchestra. And you can see just on this sheet how many possible people there are that can be employed by an orchestra. Now, every orchestra is different and every business is different, so this is not set in stone, but this gives you an idea that there's usually a president and CEO of the organization, and he oversees everything. And then within that, you can see all of these possible jobs. So if you're saying to yourself, I really love music, I want music to be a part of my life, but maybe I don't want to perform music, maybe consider working for an orchestra. Maybe math is your passion. Any math people? No math people? Okay.
Oh,
I was a math person.
Oh, man.
I loved math. Math, middle school, high school, college, I loved math. And so if you say to yourself, I really love math, can I make a career in music using math? Yes, because now you can work for a symphony orchestra. We sell tickets. We have to pay the musicians. There's all kinds of accounting that goes into doing an orchestra. So even if you say to yourself, I don't really want to perform, but I love music, consider working for an arts organization because you get that love of music. Our staff will tell you one of the best things about working here is that we get to hear the orchestra rehearse. And so we're sitting in our offices, we're working on other things, but we have live music playing in the background. That's amazing. So definitely look into the possible careers here. Now real fast, I'm going to try to do the same thing. When I went off to college, I wanted to be a performance major. I was going to play with a symphony orchestra. That was kind of my dream. I have my bachelor's in performance, but I also did music education because I said I could also see myself being a band or an orchestra teacher. I went and then did my master's in trumpet performance and also did my master's in arts administration. And it was at that time I said, I really prefer the behind the scenes, the working in the office in order to make sure these productions happen. And because education was sort of my love, I went the education path. And so now I every day get to work with students just like yourselves, either teaching them to play their instruments or doing presentations like this, or making sure that you have access to the arts. So you can kind of see through me, and Travis is a very similar path too. I changed careers multiple times, and there is nothing wrong with that. Try everything you can possibly try because something's going to stick and something you're going to find that you love. Your story's very similar. So.
Yeah, I too went and did my bachelor's degree in performance. I played the bassoon, and I wanted to be an orchestral musician. That was my dream ever since I was a young boy. I wanted to play in an orchestra somewhere, and so I went to school for performance. I got my bachelor's in performance. Then I decided to go on to graduate school, got my master's in performance, and then I also got a third degree called an artist diploma or a performance certificate. I didn't want to be a doctor because I knew I didn't want to teach. But I still wanted to perform, and I still wanted to continue my teaching. So I got an artist diploma. So I have 3 degrees, all focused on music performance. Yet I am here today working in music education because once I got out of school, I decided, you know what? I love performing, but I also don't really love to practice. So what can I do in order to stay involved with music because this is my passion in my life? What other options can I do in order to just keep music in my life? And the Sarasota Orchestra was an option, and I took it, and I absolutely love every minute working in music education because I get to work with kids like you and help you guys figure out what you want to do and watch you guys take on your dreams.
What schools did you go
I went to, my undergrad is from Florida State University up in Tallahassee. I also did my master's, my first master's is from Florida State, and then I went to Northwestern up in Chicago to finish my school.
I went to, so I was born and raised in Virginia, so I went to school in Virginia called James Madison University for my bachelor's, and then I did my graduate work at the University of Cincinnati College Conservatory of Music.
And we're going to talk about colleges a little bit later. Can somebody let him in real fast? Thank you, Debbie. Younger legs. Yeah, so we are going to go through a little bit of colleges, but what we want to do today, you can ask us any questions. We will answer as to the best of our ability on all of that. But we want to give you a starting place for you, how you start to figure out what it is you may want to do. So we are going to talk in depth about a couple of careers, mainly so that you have an idea of what the varieties are. So with the symphony orchestra, and we just talked about that, you can do almost anything. You can be a recording engineer, and you can record concerts for the orchestra. We also put together video presentations, and we put out audio for our audiences to listen to. If you like graphics, if you like drawing and using computers to create, we have a marketing department that puts together all of our flyers and all of our press materials. If you like the hands-on side of it, you know, we have an entire team here that their job is to set up the orchestra. We had somebody that came in and set up all these chairs and tables for you. They set up all this percussion equipment that you see around. That may be an option for you too. If you want performing, you want to play with a symphony orchestra, if you want to play with your own band, that is definitely a possibility too. But there are a lot of careers out there. I'm going to bring David up to talk a little bit too. So David does a little bit something different that you guys may not know about, but it is a career path in music. And if you wouldn't mind telling them kind of your career path, how you got started, and now what you do.
Well, I'm a classically trained cellist, so that's what I started doing since I was 11 years old. And what I do now is probably 80% of what I do now is making instruments and restoring musical instruments, all in the violin family. And so that's a very different path. You still get to work in music, and I'll tell you a little bit more about my first career. But what I do now is very hands-on, and it's a very specialized field. And in the tradition of that, though, is very different because in academia, what we call academia, if you're going to go and teach at a university, teach at schools, you require certain certifications to be able to do that. In the career of making instruments, we call it apprenticeship. An apprenticeship is it's a very different type of education, and for the past over 500 years, we've been doing that in making instruments. And what happens is that it's this secret society that passes information from one generation to the next into how to build instruments. And there are secrets of the trade that are passed in that generation. And it's like a pedigree. Do you guys know what a pedigree is, right? You get a, yeah, no? A pedigree is like your family lineage. So whatever your last name is comes from way behind, right? It just keeps passing on, and then you know who your grandfather is and your great-grandfather. Right? And you can kind of do a genealogy kind of a thing. Do you understand the word genealogy? No? Yeah? Genealogy? No? Okay. Well, it's kind of like that, but you basically trace your family way back decades or hundreds of years, okay? So when we talk about pedigree in the music business, especially when you make an instrument, you're tracing back into what tradition you made a certain instrument, okay? The tradition in which I make instruments in the violin family goes back to Cremona of the 1500s. That's a long time ago, right? Cremona, which is now Italy, back then was the Austro-Hungarian Empire, but now we call it Italy. And so you study with someone who created instruments, who learned from someone else who created instruments, who learned from someone else who created, pretty much all of a sudden you go back to a family of makers that go back a couple of hundred years. Okay, so that's the tradition that I do. And then the restoration part of it is a very different thing because it's actually reverse engineered. What is reverse engineered? You have to find out how something was made so that then you can replicate that so that you can put an instrument back together. Some of the instruments that I restore are a couple of hundred years old. Some of them are only a year old. And you have to understand how they're made first before you can take them apart and put them back together. So there's for those who are math inclined, that's a lot of math involved. And within the work that I do, which we call it luthiery, luthier was referred to someone who made lutes, and a lute is a musical instrument back from the Renaissance time. And so it's been the tradition to call anybody who makes lutes a luthier, and that's why we carry that name. So it's based on tradition more than it is based on that academic education. Now, we require engineers, we require all kinds of different scientists, because when we go back, we also, raise your hand if you know what an alchemist is. What's an alchemist?
Alchemist was a person who created, like, supposedly back in the 15th, or I'm not sure, that supposedly had, they're like a wizard, like, but they're like elements. They use like rocks, metals, and like make into different ones.
That's, you're looking at one. Yeah, an alchemist, it's exactly someone who worked with, again, it's an empirical career. It's you learn by your experience. You don't learn by going to the traditional route of going in academia, but you learn by someone else taught you how to make something that will lead you to make something else, to make something, and you keep that recipe secret. And you don't pass it to anybody else unless you trust that person. And you're like, what's your name?
Jesus.
That's my formula for varnish. Don't give it to anybody else. And then you'll find someone you trust, and then you pass that information to the next person. And that's the tradition that I work in. And that, so when you're a violin maker, per se, you build in a certain tradition, you have been taught tricks of the trade that are very personal, and one of them being varnish, or how to cook glue, or how do you handle a tool, or how you make a specific tool that you keep in a special drawer where no one can see it unless they pay you a lot of money to look at it. Right? And everybody's like, oh, I got the attention with money, right? Yeah. Well, it's a very specialized field, and because it's so specialized, we also need the help of scientists. So, raise your hand if you know what dendrochronology is.
See it?
Dendrochronology. No? Dendrochronology means the finding out the age of wood. Okay? So, raise your hand if you know what a tree is. Okay. So when you cut a tree and you see the rings inside, each ring tells you how old it is, right? Dendrochronology takes and counts how many rings, and you can detect how, more or less, how old a tree was. Well, it goes farther than that, and this is the trick. Now, you have to find out the patterns of the growth of the rings. Sometimes we get dry seasons, and we get this, I also have a degree in geology, so let's not go there. But part of that was, when you look at the Grand Canyon, has anybody been in the Grand Canyon? Yeah? And you look at those walls, those are millions of years of history of the earth.
You can also tell the age of the Grand Canyon because like on layers.
Correct.
Ocean, rain, even with the marks, like line, you can also count and see how old it is.
Exactly. Same thing with wood. But you can tell dry season, wet season, all throughout that. So there, you will look at a tree and you'll see that some rings are closer together than other rings. And so you can tell by counting how many rings there are when the dry season was, when the wet season was, or 1 year was this, 1 year was that, and all that stuff. It tells you a lot of history, but it's like a thumbprint. So dendrochronology allows us to study that characteristic of the wood And it tells us the age of the wood, because it tells us throughout, we actually have dating all the way to, I think, 1300s. So we can go back with records and find out when that specific pattern of growth happened in a specific time, in a specific place in the world. Does that make sense?
I got a question.
Yes.
So when you're looking at instruments and you're restoring them, you're looking at the age of the wood, so that way you can tell whether how long it may last and when it started, or what kind of wood to replace it as well?
What wood to replace it? Yes, absolutely. And then we also find out there's certain wood with a certain growth pattern that is better than other wood with a certain growth pattern. And so someone may, you probably, if you go to eBay, you'll see you can find a violin for $20.
Then you go to a music store, you see one for 120, 180.
Right?
Cause
And
you
then,
know, 'cause the eBay violins are like not in good class, so like they probably do something. But you go to an instrument store, you have them fine wood and finish, like good parts and everything.
that's right. Now, and you're absolutely right, the quality of the wood, what kind of wood you're using in there is very important. Now, imagine, I have an instrument right now in my workshop that's from mid-1700s. That's a long time ago. Now, if I need to replace a piece of wood that's there, I have to source a piece of wood that would fit that pattern that is the same age. And it's going to cost me hundreds of dollars to find one piece of that. So, and that is going, I have to source that. Sometimes it takes months, sometimes it takes years to be able to find the right fit for it. And then once you do it, you can't even see how it blends, because it's from the same age, same type of wood, and it's same cut of wood. So all those things, so when you're like, oh, make an instrument. Well, there are different levels of making instruments, right? But I'm more of a restorer with antiques. I also make bows and also make instruments. And I do everything, I try to do everything by hand. I do have some power tools, but that's by tradition, you try to do everything by hand. You know what a CNC machine is? Anybody? Yeah?
The wood.
It's a CNC machine. It's like a 3D printer, but instead of uses a router to carve the wood, and you can program a computer. I have a colleague who has.
I think I've seen that before.
Yeah.
Like, it's like a piece of wood, like a bar, and it's like a little thing, like a little beam, just cutting the shape into the wood.
That's correct. Yeah.
It's
So
concentrated heat.
when you go to a violin shop and you buy an instrument for a couple $100, it was probably cut by a machine. Because you can just turn it on and they'll probably cut 10 instruments at the same time. So they're not employing a person like you guys to do it. They're employing electricity and paying for software and all that kind of stuff. So and that's the thing that, yes,
Don't get me wrong, aren't there some people who make violins by hand?
I do.
Yeah, you make it by like machine, it's alright machine, but you make it by hand, you can actually have how you can tell the difference between machine and hand.
That's right. Did I tell you I love you? You're absolutely brilliant. Absolutely, yeah. Something that's made by hand has more value because it comes from all the knowledge that you have, all the experience that you have, and it also the love that you have for the instrument. My first love was at 5